everybody, welcome back to another episode of Lockbox Lunatics. I am Steve Lambert, your co-host up here in Kennewick, Washington, and I've got trusty other co-host here, Mr. Chad Kamp in
Uh,
Arizona. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing perfect. I'm doing perfect. I'm a little lunaticy today on the Lockbox Lunatic side of things, right?
Right on.
So
I was trying to figure out
what's
our
new in your
titles.
world? What's that?
I was trying to figure out our titles, co-hosts and hosts, and
Yeah, I don't know.
whatever we want to call ourselves. I guess,
Yes.
really. I guess
We guaranteed we've been called worse.
100%, 100%. Dude, not a
Yeah.
lot happening up here. You know, the sun's out. I actually had to close the blinds today. If you see little dapperly spots on me every now and then, it's just the sun coming through the screen. But we do have sun. We're in the mid 60s. It's
Perfect.
happy days again.
Nice.
I think the doldrums of winter are mostly behind us.
Our weekly weather forecast from
Right,
Washington. I love
exactly.
that. Thanks for
Exactly.
thanks for tuning in for the forecast of the weather, right?
100%. It's in arrears, but that's mostly. And so, but the market's going crazy. Market's picked up. You know, it's exciting times. Buyers are really out there. They're coming out of the woodwork. They're deciding that, hey, you know what? Rates dropped down to like what 5.8 this last week, went up to
Right.
6.1, kind of hovering around 6.59 right now. So rates are in a great spot compared to where they have been. A lot of incentives out there. We're seeing a lot of credit unions and banks offering these special programs on ARMs, different things like that to kind of help kickstart the market. Inventory is pretty much stabilized, and I think prices have dropped down a little bit to where there's that kind of that equilibrium now with the sellers and buyers, where they're finding that like, hey, we want to do something now. And so we're seeing people
Right.
jump in that have been on the fence, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But you enlightened me to something last week. You said, something about FinCEN, and I was like, what are you talking about, Chad? And I should know about this. It caught me off guard. So I went and did a little bit of research on it. And it's a new financial reporting requirement that was became law. What was it, December 1st, 25, and then went into effect here this month. And I know you have some thoughts on that. I understand,
Well,
but you have way more wealth, way more. You have far more formative thoughts on it than I do. I guess is what I'm trying to say. My words aren't
Well,
like,
is it any wonder that I'm in tune with the financial crimes division of the federal government than you? What does that say about me?
well, it does make me wonder.
Does make you wonder.
I think it's because you're very close to a person that handles a lot of taxes and things like that. And so you by nature, I have a feeling you kind of get a little bit of a lead in on some of these things.
I do get a little bit of a lead in. I've got a little bit in on, I don't know how involved she is in the financial crimes world either, right? So she better not be at all.
I know I try and keep that stuff on the DL. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. Keep it on the DL. But anyway, so FinCEN, they have a new reporting requirement for properties that are being purchased cash, right? And part of that is if a LLC or if a trust is purchasing a property, 100% cash, no financing involved whatsoever, there's a reporting requirement. And so this piggybacks off of, I don't remember how long ago, 2 years ago, maybe,
A couple
the
years.
yeah, a couple years ago, the IRS wanted everyone to fill out a form identifying all the members of the LLC. So I see this as an extenuation of that because that program didn't, the teeth was removed from the failure to do so requirement, the fining aspect of it. So there are some LLCs, I may or may not be one of them, that didn't comply, right? I'm there again, I don't know. I may or may not be. So I see this as a continuation of the feds trying to pierce those LLCs. Now, there's a lot of LLCs out there you
Or-
can't find memberships about, especially those filed in, say, Delaware, Nevada. I think Wyoming's
And you
another
have
state.
multiple layers, right? You have people
Yeah.
that have filed LLCs, like you said, let's say Delaware, and then they move to Nevada, and then they go to Arizona, then they go to Washington, then they go to Texas, right? You've got multiple layers of these companies. And I think we should give people just a little bit of background too. FinCEN, it's an anti-money laundering initiative. That's basically what
Right.
they're trying to do. They're trying to identify organizations that are using, excuse me, all cash real estate transactions as a way to clean money, basically. And
Right.
they're doing it by having seven, eight, nine layers of LLCs with memberships with different mailing addresses and different registered owners or registered addresses for official mailing, et cetera, et cetera, but trying to track down who actually is a member of that LLC or can be difficult. And so it's an attempt to try to curb some of that. That's kind of the basis of FinCEN. So
And me coming from, I'm not sure how many people know this, but I worked for the state for a while and I pierced corporate veils. And one of the frustrations when I was working on behalf of the state were those entities that were incorporated in either Nevada or in Delaware because they are very, small business or LLC friendly. They don't release that information to memberships. Now here
right.
in
Yeah.
Arizona, I can go into the corporation commission. I can pull up the members most times. If it's stacked, if they're all stacked in Arizona, I may have to spend some time following that back, but at some point in time, I'm gonna be able to come across the name of a member with an address.
Yeah.
And so the feds is just trying to get around that. So some of the requirements from the filing perspective is, well, first off, there's a 110 data points that are required to be reported. The reporting requirement is placed upon the title company, right? So Steve, you and I are agents. Why are we talking about this?
Well, because we're going to get a call from our clients saying, hey, Chad, title company's asking me for a lot of stuff that I don't understand why they need this. So that's going to come. That's going to happen, right? That's what's going to go on is we're going to get bombarded with questions as to why the title company's asking for this.
Yeah, and we need to be prepared. We need to set proper expectations to avoid those angry phone calls in the 11th hour. You're
Yeah,
getting ready to sign, and a buyer's like, "Hey, why am I expected to provide this?" Or from a seller's perspective, "Hey, the buyer may have some reservations about providing all this information, and it could delay or stall or even prevent closing." Now that sets up a whole different ball of wax with the earnest deposit and specific performance and things of that nature. But we're here to talk about, FinCEN and the items that it is impacted by it. There again, it's cash deals, right? And
mhm.
it's on residential properties. So 4 units or less, so a fourplex or smaller, right? And so if you come in cash, someone comes in cash with an LLC or a trust, there's going to be a reporting requirement. Now, there are some exceptions. I think if the transfer is because of a death, bankruptcy, a divorce,
Like a
1031 deferred exchange, what's that?
court order as well. Yeah,
A
court.
court order, right? So if those instances come into play, then there's really no requirement to do that. Now, my take on this, if you're truly trying to prevent money laundering, sex trafficking, drug trafficking, because that's what needs laundered is the money that is attached to those crimes, right? Put a blanket. Anyone who's coming in cash, LLC or trust, commercial, residential, doesn't matter.
Yep.
In
Yeah.
my opinion, this is they're trying to set the appearance of trying to do something about it,
There
right?
are a lot of exceptions to it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's interesting because and there's different dollar exceptions too. So if you're a known entity or a known LLC, like they have a red flag or something in the background, they've flagged you, right? Then the cash limit is 5,000. Anything over 5,000 is automatically going to get a look, right? And if you're a non-known entity, anything 25,000 or over will get a look. But if it's under 25,000, won't really get a look, right? Per their guide, for what they're saying. It is interesting to me because with the exceptions to those rules, it it could invite some nefarious activity, and I hate to say it that way, but
Right.
um, falsified marriages because oh yeah, we're getting a divorce, right? We don't want to get looked at it like you know what I mean. They're creating avenues for people. Let's face it, if somebody's going to launder money because of the things that the money is associated with, we're not dealing with a very up and up person of character, right? Or organization of character. When they see the exceptions, they're going to say, "Cool. How do I work within those exceptions to do what I want to do?" They're not looking at it going, "Oh, I better not do any of these things." They don't care about that. They honestly don't. So it's kind of like the anti-argument to the anti-argument, I guess you would say, is that they're going to say, "Here's the exceptions. How do I find holes in this to go ahead and operate within this framework so that I can get away with this free and clear. Because typically we see that. I'm going to make a big generalization here, but when somebody's looking to break a crime, they already know what's wrong with it. They're looking to find the exceptions to be successful in their attempts.
Right. Well, it's like water, the path of least resistance, right? They're going to be tracking down the path of least resistance. And we need to throw out there, this is not, we're not on here to show you how to avoid the reporting requirements.
Right.
We want you to abide by the law. Honestly, what I want is I want that law to apply equally to everybody
Yeah.
and not just to the residential properties. That's my opinion.
Yeah. No, our goal here today is to enlighten both consumers and agents as to the fact that this is a thing and you're
Right.
going to get asked about it, right? Our going back to our here's the thing, right? Is that this is a thing, and if you're going to get asked about it, and you don't want to have the deer in the headlights look. And I can say with confidence that I'd be surprised if any brokerage in my area, anyways, I'd be surprised how many, if any, are even talking about it. So I'm going to push this all over the place for this podcast, and you listeners should too.
Right.
Because this is something that I think we really do need to be aware of because, again, as broker agents, salespeople, realtors, whatever your nomenclature is for whatever state or MLS you're in, is that you have to be aware of these changes and what's happening in the world around you. And it's important that we share this information. I was completely naive about it until Chad brought it up and said, "Hey, man, this is going to be a thing." And I was like, "Really?"
Yeah.
Um,
And,
so it's important to share this information and talk about it.
Yeah, and it's going to cause us agents, a lot of frustration from a client perspective, especially if we're not prepared to have those conversations, those dialogues. So if you have a buyer that's coming in cash, you need to be aware that you need to have that conversation with that buyer of the reporting requirement. Here's the thing. If they're buying it in their name, from my understanding, there's no reporting requirement. So if,
That doesn't sound like
Steve
it.
Lambert and Chad Kamp want to go in together and buy a property, we can, as long as it's, our natural person, where if you pursue some sort of entity structure, LLC and or a trust, then at that point in time, you have a requirement to identify who those members are that are affiliated with that LLC.
Right.
And no one knows what FinCEN is going to do with that information. We don't know how it's going to get scrubbed. I do know that the FinCEN requires the title company to provide that, and they require it to be provided electronically. They're not allowing any paper to transfer between the title companies and themselves. And
Mhm.
from what I understand as well, the title companies are required to gather the information electronically. So we all have those elderly folks that are immune to computers, right?
Yeah.
They're not very tech savvy. So we may have to come alongside them and say, "Hey, you need to fill this out online." And when they look at you and they say, "I don't even know how to turn my computer on," which
Yeah.
if my father were still alive, that's exactly what he would say. "I don't even know how to turn my computer on. I don't know how to send an email."
Yeah, I mean, the big thing about this is the onus this puts on title companies because the reporting time frame is 30 to 60 days after that closing, is they are taking on a whole nother side of this in terms of probably having to visit people remotely, right? To like a remote signing. If they don't
Yeah.
have access to a computer, they're going to have to go to that client. And then what does that look like? Because you know what happens when so seller disclosures, I can't fill them out. You can't fill them out for your client. Your client has to fill them out to the best of their ability. If they don't know, they don't know. I just, right? But that's their job. I can legally not sit there and fill out seller disclosures. It's not my property, and I don't know the answers to it. So that's misrepresentation. In the same vein, the title company representative sitting there with that person is probably going to get asked questions. How do I answer this? Right. And so this brings up a whole other side of it in terms of the legalities and liabilities and where does that line get crossed and where does it fall to where do title companies have the opportunity to say, hey, the person has no access to a computer and they did not understand how to fill out the form. I
Yeah.
mean, what is that trigger? What starts with that, right? Because that will happen. That will become a thing. That will happen where somebody
Yeah.
will say, I'm not filling this out. I
Yeah.
refuse. And
And
when that happens, what does that do to the deal? Does it kill the deal? Does the deal keep going? Is that something that becomes separate from the deal? because I don't think they want it stopping a deal. But what happens in the back end with the title company? These are questions we need to ask our title people, and everybody should be asking their title people.
So when I asked my title company, they said it's going to stall the deal.
Wow. Okay.
Until that information is received in the format that FinCEN is requiring it to be received, the
Yeah,
deal cannot and will not move forward.
that's interesting. I'm going to send an email right now to my title person
Yeah.
because that's what I
And
want.
yeah, and there again, there's 110 data points that's being collected, right? And so it's not going to be a quick 30-second filling out of the form. I understand the title companies are trying to streamline that because I'm sure there's some redundant questions. You know how the government is, redundancy is key. So if they're able to limit the number of times a specific question is asked to be answered, I'm sure the title company is going to be able to do that if it's within their, legalities, if they're able to do that. Uh,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, there are going to be some buyers and that are going to be upset. There are going to be some sellers upset when the buyer's not performing. And so that's just, that's just going to be the nature of the beast. And the sooner we get ahead of it as agents, whenever we recognize that we're involved in an all cash deal and recognize that this reporting requirement may come up, that conversation needs to start happening immediately. So you
Yeah.
can start managing expectations, start managing those emotions, because that's what we do is we manage all sorts of things as an agent from an agent's perspective.
Yeah,
So,
I think just having a quick blurb about just a quick discussion to say, hey, be aware. This may be something you're going to get questioned on. Just bringing awareness to it and not overstepping our bounds either and trying to act like we're an expert on it because we know how that goes, right?
right.
I want to make you aware of this, that the title company's probably going to, ask you some things about this. If they do, great. If they don't, that, like I said, they understand the reporting requirements. They understand what's needed of them and and kind of take it from there. So
Yeah. And I know with my client base, the first question they're going to ask me is, what is FinCEN going to do with this information? And we have no idea. At this point, the title
yeah.
companies have no idea what they're going to do with it. I'm sure it's going to go into a database. And
Mhm.
then, is it going to start getting challenged from a Fourth Amendment perspective by different groups out there? And so
Oh
that's
man, that's going to be interesting, right? It's going to be very interesting. By the way, shout out to AZ right there with my Merkin Vineyards. So,
oh, nice.
yep,
Perfect.
for the Arizona winery. So funny shirt,
Nice.
great winery.
Nice.
Anyways, but yeah, no, I think there's going to be a lot of kind of little speed bumps and things and probably some blind roads we're going to go down here this first year until they get this kind of dialed in and then make some changes to it because I don't hate the idea behind it. I understand what they're trying to do. So I think their intentions may be fairly well directed. Execution is another thing.
Yeah, I think it's just a poor execution of what they're trying to accomplish. I think it's extremely poor
I agree with you. I
execution.
think the blanket people might say, well, why do they apply this to everybody? It's like, well, hey, it's easier to weed it out if you're not than it is to try and dial it in,
Yeah.
right? It's
And,
easy,
and
I think. So
and who knows, the financial crimes unit might see and this is the only logical explanation that I can come up with is, they might see, okay, the majority of these money laundering issues are small LLCs that are buying fourplexes and smaller, paying cash. Um, i- Items that are excluded from this reporting requirement are commercial structures. Now,
yeah,
Steve, you deal in commercial. I can't imagine where a warehouse could easily be converted into apartment style type
yeah,
complex
exactly. It is
for these
interesting
nefarious
that
actions, right?
it's funny that that's exempt from it because you're talking, millions of dollars on multiple transactions that can pass through a lot of LLCs, and then you can have multiple leases in place and subleases. There's so many ways to water something down and create a lot of tentacles within the commercial side of it that I am a bit surprised that it's not getting a pretty hard look.
Right.
Maybe that's
So now,
coming. Maybe that's coming. I don't know, but it is interesting.
so now you see my pessimism,
No,
right?
I get
Why
it.
I'm
I
very
get it.
pessimistic about this whole ordeal. It's creating, in my opinion, just additional strain on title companies, additional strain on mom and pops. Do you have individuals that are saving or they want to move money from? Now, I do appreciate the 1031s are exempt. Okay, so from what I understand anyway, the 1031 is exempt.
Yeah,
Um, so, but still, you've got individuals that could be saving up, and I see this hurting the small mom and pops investors more than it's hurting the drug cartel.
I agree. Yeah,
Drug
because
cartel,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, so they're going to do exactly what you said. They're going to look at the exemptions, and this is our path of least resistance. Let's start flowing this way. So I think it's the intention is noble, and like you said, the execution is just not very well thought out.
yeah, not quite the same. Not quite the same.
No. Well, and
Uh,
then what did Ronald Reagan say? Be afraid whenever someone shows up and they say, hello, I'm from the government and I'm here to
Watch
help
out
you."
when you get a monster.
Watch out for the monster. Yeah, but the most scary thing anyone can hear is, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you."
Right? It's so true. And it is interesting because like you said, I think they're trying to pinpoint certain things, but they're allowing loopholes. And maybe in my naive, maybe me looking at it, maybe the other side of that equation is that they're leaving loopholes out there because they want to see who tries to jump into the I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point because if you start seeing a transition from monies flowing from an LLC from residential to commercial, I guess they could flush them out in that manner.
Yeah,
Where-
might be like a tip off and sit there and say, well, let's see. We got these on flags already. Let's see if the commercial real estate acquisitions pick up, and then they can say, all right, let's take a deeper dive on those folks, right?
Right.
Um, it is interesting, man. It's a very
Yeah.
interesting time. There's so many changes in our industry in this last year. It's been pretty cool, man. It's what I think about it is at first I didn't like them because I don't like change because we had a nice little system that was cruising along and it worked really smoothly. But since the whole thing about commission disclosures and all that, which the funny part is like every consumer I know and every deal I've ever done, we've had a discussion on commission, and it's never been, this is what I do. I mean, I was free to say that this is my commission and it's X. And if you don't like it, I'm not going to work with you. And you could go to another
Right.
agent, right? You didn't have to take me. That was just it was kind of like saying, hey, you know what, Chad, I want to buy your Ferrari. And you're like, well, I want this for it, Steve. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to give you that. And you're like, cool, you're welcome to go find another one, right?
Yeah.
Choice. And it's created this whole discussion that has confused the consumer more. It's fascinating. So I feel a lot of the things that we're doing, they're starting to nitpick so many different things that they're creating confusion um, of bigger proportions that I feel creates other financial opportunities for people to set up specific industries just to answer these questions now. It's wild, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's creating mountains out of molehills.
It really
And
is.
the quickest way I explain it to my folks is, look, we've always negotiated compensation for both sides of the transaction, the buyers and the seller side.
Yeah.
Now we're negotiating for the buyer side at a different point in time. Period.
Yeah. That's all it is. And the interesting thing is it was designed, well, I disagree with the people that brought the lawsuit. I'm just going to put that out there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think they were complete morons on that, and it was a cash.
I think they were brilliant, Steve.
No, they were. They were. It was a
So
cash.
if you step back and you say, "Hey, how can I enrich the attorneys that I know and love? How can
Oh,
I enrich
they did
them?"
it. What's up?
And
Generational, right? $38
yeah,
million per attorney. There was the three attorneys. It was insane. And the funniest part is, I'm just going to go off on a baby tangent here. The
go
funniest
for it.
part is on that is they said, well, we put $4 million of our own stuff out there without any guarantee we were going to win the lawsuit. Oh, so just like a listing agent that puts out a few $1,000s out of their pocket, that's not guaranteed to sell the home. The ones you were just suing in this class action, the ones you just said were ripping off consumers. Interesting. The
Well, I
hypocrisy was just mind blowing on that whole thing. But attorneys will never sue attorneys because judges were attorneys at one point in time, and they will never cannibalize themselves. So I'll tell you that was a signed, sealed, and delivered law. That was fat. Gosh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, and I love the irony in their request for compensation in regards to this is not like the realtors out there. The standard was it standard
No,
comp?
they said their compensation was 33%, which fell into the 30 to 40% usual and customary fees. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's the exact verbiage used against us. Usual and customary 5 to 6%.
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
and
So
they
okay
but
for
they
you,
even
not okay for us.
well they
Interesting.
even went in they even went on to say that it was not like real estate agents. In that verbiage, they said this is not like the real estate agents. It's exactly like real estate agents. What
It's so
so anyway.
fascinating, dude. Anyways, that was a money grab. That's a whole nother episode. Anyways, all right. Well, we've got to respect our folks' time. So we gotta
Yes, we
wrap up,
do.
man. We gotta wrap up. So, hey, I really appreciate you, Chad, bringing this to my attention. And I hope we're bringing it to a lot of other people's attention because I was not aware. I remember hearing about it. And I remember the reporting requirements way back in the day when they were asking about LLC, this and that, so on and so forth. I did not know it became into effect on March 1st. So I'm hoping that we gave some information to our listeners out there to at least have a chance to go see how this is going to impact you and whatever it is you're doing, either within your business or as a broker or as a buyer or a seller or investor. Be aware of what's out there, be aware of what's going on with it and how you can best protect yourself. And don't be surprised, I guess, when you get questions. And bottom line is, if you're laundering money, shame on you.
Don't.
Yeah, not a good
That's
idea.
right.
Not a good idea. I mean, I know Ozarks made it look cool for a while, but
They
we saw
did.
that
They did.
stuff.
Roosters came to roost, came home to roost there, right?
They did. They
So
did.
anyway, well, hey, thanks for joining us today. If you would go ahead and, as they say, smash the like button, okay, if you're feeling that aggressive, or you can just press it. Your choice, right? Go ahead and like, and if you would share this with other agents to kind of help make them aware. If you have any ideas on topics and or guests that you would like to have us have on board, put that in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. So again, we'll catch you next week on Lockbox Lunatics. Take care, guys.